Well, it is past 7, and so we are going to get started. And um, I do welcome each one of you this evening to this space on Zoom. Um, as you all know, I'm Ruth Roselle, a director of the Butchery Center for Peace and Nonviolence, and welcome you on behalf of the Butchery Center as well as Central Seminary. Delighted you've joined us. We do have quite a few registered for this program, but we are recording it. So they may be ones that will be viewing it later. And that means we've got a smaller group and we can have perhaps some nice discussion afterward. Before we get started, I want to remind you to please mute yourself so as not to disturb others. We will be recording the session so folks can watch it later, and it'll be posted on the Butchery Center webpage of Central Seminary's website. And also I'll share it to the Butchery Center Facebook page so you can share it with friends or whatever you want to do. Feel free to put your name in the chat and where you're zooming in from, any other information that you would like to share about who you are. And as we go along, if you'd like to, you can put some questions in the Q&A, and we'll address those toward the end of the session. I think if we remain this small a group, we can have just kind of a discussion as we go along, probably. And so we don't have to maybe be so formal about putting in the Q&A, but feel free to do that if you'd prefer to do that. So creation care in the 21st century involves transitioning away from burning fossil fuels to using clean energy like solar and wind. So today we are going to be talking together about how we can do that as individuals and families and as church communities. We have 2 presenters today that will help us to think about installing rooftop solar and electrifying everything. The first will be Bill Wood, who will speak to us about solar for homes and for churches. Bill has been a solar project developer for Cromwell Solar in Lawrence, Kansas since 2014, and works with families and businesses who want to install solar. He's a man of faith, and he's been called on by Cromwell to work with churches who are interested in installing solar, and has worked with a number of churches successfully to do that. Prior to this, he worked for the Douglas County Extension Office, and as its director, oversaw a solar system installed in 2010, and his family also has installed solar. So he brings a lot of experience and knowledge to us tonight about that. Then we'll hear from Dr. Terrace Roselle, who will share his thoughts regarding his efforts and oversight of having rooftop solar installed and electrifying everything in our home that was utilizing gas. Terry is a professor of pastoral theology in the area of ethics and ministry praxis at Central Seminary. He also serves as the Flanagan Chair at the Center for Practical Bioethics and works as a bioethicist at the University of Kansas Health System. So Bill, now I'm going to turn this time over to you. We are really glad that you're able to join us in this Zoom space, and we look forward to what you have to share with us. And I
Thank you, Ruth.
Share this screen for you.
Okay. Well, thanks for allowing me to be part of your series on what faith communities and individuals can do to be good stewards of the earth that our God created. The first 2 slides will have a little bit about the company I work for, but my main emphasis is on education. We can go to the next slide. The company began in 1982, and it was at that time doing hot air and hot water solar. And then our owner, Aaron Cromwell, bought it in 2000, and we switched to doing photovoltaic solar panels. We also did 1 wind turbine, but Aaron says never again. There's too many moving parts there. Cromwell also has a environmental business side to it, where we work all over the United States doing things like mold remediation, those type of health concerns. Well, my path, next slide, my path into working with Cromwell came via the Douglas County, on the right side, the Douglas County Extension Office. Our board decided to do a solar system, partly to save money, but also we had it hooked up so that people could get on our website and look at the production and how it was working. And so I've actually pulled pictures off our website there to use in when I go to talk with solar. That was installed in December 2010, turned on in January of 2011. My wife and I, after looking at what it was doing for 3 years, we decided we'd like to have solar. And so we asked Cromwell to give us a solar system. Cromwell won the bid for the extension office, so we were comfortable with them. These panels are old enough that back then they had silver frames and blue tops, and you'll see some nicer, prettier ones in some of our slides later. Let's see. Next page, please. What are some reasons for going solar? Well, environmental is a big one. And that was one of the reasons my wife and I did it, is we felt like, you know, free sun, creating energy versus having to pull it out of the soil or the dirt, coal and oil. And so I've sold to quite a few farmers and ranchers because they know that that free sun grows everything. It grows their grasses and their crops. Economic is another reason some people go to it. Right now, the incentives are 30% tax credit for residential and commercial. And then nonprofits, the Inflation Reduction Act, they came in where they're going to give a 30% grant to nonprofits like churches. So that really helps with the payback. And then impression. I like to let my neighbors know that, you know, I'm trying to do my best to keep the Earth's weather happier than it seems to be right now. Next page, please. Kind of an outline is a few photos of our installations, talk a little bit about how a solar system works, solar equipment we need, how to look and see, is your place a candidate for solar? And then some financial numbers. Next page, please. Here's a couple, before I joined, you know, Missouri had some pretty good tax credits and incentives for solar. And so both of these on this picture are in Missouri. Both of them are at churches. The one with the ground mount, the church didn't have a roof that would work very well, so they did a ground mount. Next slide, please. This is a church in Kansas City, Missouri. As you can see, it's a flat roof. And on flat roofs, we do not put any holes in the roof. And so we use concrete blocks to ballast them down and hold them on the roof. And you can't see it, but there's about a foot of difference between each row because the front ones are tilted at 10%, each row's tilted, and it casts shade to the north. So there has to be a little space between it so they don't shade each other. Page, please. This is the first church I had the privilege of selling solar to, and it's Colonial Church of Prairie Village. It was installed in November 2019, and they just had a member who offered to donate another 20,000 towards more solar panels, and so we have a contract to put more panels. It'll be on the east and west roofs that are on the north side of the building. Then the second church that I've had the privilege of helping with is the Southern Hills Mennonite in Topeka, and they were installed in April 2021. And theirs is this 2-story roof, so I don't have a picture of theirs. We need to get our guy with the drone out there, take some pictures. Next picture, please. This is an older, it's probably back in the 2015 panels, but it's out in the country residential home. Next picture. This is in town in a pretty nice neighborhood. And like I said, the newer residential panels all come with a dark black. So they try and blend in with the darker roofs. And some HOAs or some historic districts require black, all black to have. Next picture, please. This barn is probably only using about 5% of the energy it creates, but it's tied into their home. It's a pretty good sized farm home. And so it takes care of that for them. It had a great south facing roof. This picture here is south towards us. And as you can see, that house really didn't have a roof that was going to work well for solar. So they did a carport. Next picture. Here's my favorite of all our pictures. This is the Merck grocery store. It's a cooperative with mostly all natural foods. And we were able to do the roof on the flat roof in the wintertime when normally we couldn't be on a roof because it's too slick. But on a flat roof, you're not going to fall off. And then in the summertime, when the college students were gone, we had the ground mounts put into place. And we have a company that built the frames, and then we put the panels on top of it. And these panels are bifacial. So they let some light through, and if it bounces off a light car, it'll make energy from the backside. Next picture, please. This is a ground mount. We can do ground mounts. They're a little bit more expensive because of you have to dig a trench to them, and there's a lot more pipe for the racking. But this had a pretty good sized farmhouse here, and some people don't want them on the roof. Next slide, please. Okay, here's some components for a system. Basically, we have three main ones. First is the panels. The panels create DC electricity when the sun's shining at them. And then we have to have racking in order to hold them on the roof or on a ground mount. And then we need an inverter because your house has AC electricity. And coming from the electric grid is AC electricity. So the inverter changes the DC to AC and matches the sine wave so it matches with the grid. Next picture, please. There's two ways that electric companies do solar policies as far as the payment. Parallel generation is a federal law that electric companies have to abide by, but normally we use it on large commercial systems because it's not as quick a payback as net metering is, which we'll talk about next picture. So next, net metering is generally done by the month. And so whenever some people's electric bills are from the first of the month, the end of the month, somewhere in the middle, but it's 30 days approximately. And during the month, when we're got a sunny day and the electric or the solar system is making more electricity than the house is using, you can roll the meter backwards. The electric companies will put a bidirectional meter on your house and it'll roll the meter backwards. And the first time I saw mine go backwards, I wanted to dance. Then at night, when we're not making solar, we can pull those kilowatt hours that we sent, we can pull them up and use them for the same price. And so throughout the month, you can roll them backwards, pull them forward, and it's the same price. At the end of a month, the electric companies will true you up. And some of them, like KCPL, Evergy, I think Ameron in Missouri, if you have extra electricity at the end of a month, they will credit you and pay you, well, a credit towards your bill, what it costs them to make it, which is about 2.5 cents a kilowatt. If you're on a rural electric or most rural electrics, most city companies will take, if there's any extra at the end of a month, they'll just clean it out and start over. So if we're on Evergy, we'll be a little bit bigger system. And so, yes, then this slide kind of helps show it. This slide from the left is midnight, clear to midnight, and the blue is the usage of this home. And then if it's a south-facing roof, especially about 7 o'clock in the morning, it'll take off and we're starting to make it. The panels make the most energy when the sun is shining directly at them. So a low in the morning, we're not making as much. Low in the afternoon, we're not making as much. But there where that yellow is where you're producing more than the house is using. And so you're rolling the meter backwards. And then down at the bottom, Can't quite see it on mine. I believe it says there's 29 kilowatt hours of consumption and 39 production. So that day, they have an extra 10 hours that they can use the next day in case it's a rainy day or something like that. So that's why net metering is a quicker payback than the parallel. This yellow, if you were on parallel, the yellow, you would just get the 2.5 cents for it rather than the full 12 cents you might have in your home. Next page, please. Okay, here's some different panels. The ones up here on the house are the all black ones. The commercial ones are usually about a foot longer, so they've got more actual wattage to them, and they come with a silver frame and are not necessarily quite as black. And then the ones up here on the awning in front of our office, these are bifacial. You can see that they don't have a backing, it's clear glass. And so the sun hits them going towards the glass, and then if it bounces off some white rock or something underneath, it'll come back and create both ways. Next photo, please. Different types of racking for different types of buildings. We can put them on almost all the roofs except shake shingles, because they're going to crack if you try and drill a hole in them. And the same way with tile. Once the tile's up there, we can't try and drill a hole in it to keep it from leaking. Next page, please. And again, on a flat roof, we're not going to put any holes in it. We anchor them down with the weight. Next page, please. Here we see a carport at one of the banks in town, and then a ground mount that's at a school there at the bottom, and then that is the same picture as that church we saw earlier. As you can see, they have more pipes, so they're more expensive than a roof mount. Roof mounts are the cheapest, then the ground mount, and then carports. Okay. Inverters, there's basically two kinds, and then there's a hybrid in between. The one to the left here are what we call string inverters. And you might have 3 strings, and they might have from 6 to 9 panels on them. But if we only use these where there's no shade issues at all, because if shade hits one panel, that panel will decrease the production, and all of it in that same string are going to go down and match that production. So we're losing quite a bit of production. So we use string inverters where there's no shade. A lot of ground mounts are out where there's in the open, and many big flat roofs don't have any shade. So the string inverters are less expensive. On the right-hand side, you can see up underneath the panel is a micro inverter. And with micro inverters, each panel has its own inverter. So if one of the panels on the roof gets some shade on it, it only affects that panel and not any others. And so anytime we're dealing with any kind of shade, we want to use the microinverters. Now, they're a little more expensive, but they also come with a longer warranty than the string inverters do. Next page, please. Some people say, well, Kansas really isn't very sunny. But if you look here, we're every bit as sunny as sunny Florida. And we're not quite the same as New Mexico and Arizona, but we have a lot of sun. And I did, when I first came to the company, I checked and saw that the difference between Lawrence and Dodge City is about 12% more energy going west out to Dodge City because less rainy days. Next page, please. Okay, how do you know if your home is a candidate? Well, I have been using a 10 questions to ask before going solar that I send out to people who have an interest in it. But about 1.5 years ago, Google Earth came out with a Google Project Sunroof. So if you're in a city or a larger town where they've got Google Project Sunroof, you can type in your address and it'll take you to your home. And that one there in the middle with the red balloon is our home. You don't see the panels, but they're on the front side there where all that sun is. My neighbor right to the right of me last year bought solar, put it on his front roof. That tree's pretty big and shading it, but it's ash, and about 1/3 of the top is all dead already and is probably only going to last another year. So he will eventually have a lot of sun there. Next page, please. When you want to get a solar proposal, they're going to ask you for 12 months of your electric bills because of the way the policies work with electric companies. And this shows you on the left, it starts with January all the way to December. The black line is the usage for this particular home. And I'm saying it's probably an all electric home because their winter months are just about as high as their summer AC months. And then the blue line is the production of the solar system. And what the software does, it takes we plug in your zip code because we don't want to know the weather data for where you live. What direction do the panels face? Due south is 180, due east is 90. And then the slope of the panels. And that all comes into play with what this blue production line is going to look like from January through December. And so we put panels on, and if I put a panel on and the payback gets shorter, I add another panel as long as there's roof space till the payoff starts going the other direction. So we're looking for the quickest payback for you. Next page, please. Okay, just some kind of costs. A lot of people ask me, well, I've got a 2,000 square foot home. How many panels or how big a system am I going to need? And I've looked at 2,000 square foot homes that averaged under $100 a month on their bills, and another 2,000 square foot home that was averaging 250. And a lot of that has to do with how efficient the house was built, how many people are living there, and what kind of electric, do they have electric furnaces? So the price currently is somewhere around 20 to 30,000 for depending on how far you are from your dealer. And that's before we have the incentive. There's a 30% tax credit, like I mentioned, and now a 30% direct payment for nonprofits to help speed up that payback period. Panels have what they call a degradation rate, and we put that into the proposal so that each year you're going to see that it's making a little less. With the extension office, after 9 years, it's hardly lost any degradation. It's still doing quite well. And we use a 4 to 5% inflation rate for the electric costs, and that might be going higher in the future. Next page, please. I'd like to end with this one. This family bought solar, put on their house to run their house, and they also bought one of the first Teslas that came out. And so their solar was charging their car. We can take questions now or later whenever it's convenient. Ruth? Hold it, you're muted. Ruth, you're muted.
Thank you, Bill. So informative and lovely to see all those pictures and the options there. Why don't we hold off on questions because Terry's also going to kind of share a little bit, I think, about solar. Terry, you go ahead and share what you would like to say about what this journey has been like for you.
Thank you. So I'm an ethicist, and Ruth asked me to both tell our story of electrification, but say something about the ethics of it as well. So I will. I have no relevant conflicts of interest to disclose. What's ethics? Ethics is a discipline of study that's focused on moral dimensions of life. We talk about values and rules. Values are what matters or doesn't matter, or not as much. We relate that to concepts of good and bad. And we humans create rules then in correlation with what matters to us, what we value. The rules are created to enable us to attain what we consider to be good and to avoid what we consider to be bad. Values theory, at least in part, we'd say that value or disvalue is in part according to how things affect us. So, for example, rain is valued when it comes to ameliorate a drought condition. A few drops fell out here north of Lawrence, where we live, this afternoon, and I valued even those few drops because of the long drought that we have been having. Drought is disvalued because it results in our gardens, our flowers, our lawns dying or browning. Rain in excess is disvalued when it destroys our crops or our properties with flooding. So we value or disvalue the things according to how we're affected. We count something as good or bad depending on how it works out for us, the outcomes. So, for example, a vaccination is good if indeed we do not contract COVID as a result, or the flu or RSV. And I'm thinking about this because I got all 3 of those vaccinations yesterday. And you know, if it keeps me from getting sick, it will, of course, be good. A vaccination is deemed bad by some part of our society who believes that mistakenly that the outcomes are worse than getting infected with a virus. So if you believe that that vaccinations cause autism or even death, as some people were believing around COVID vaccinations, then you would consider them bad. So this is just basic values theory. When we apply this to electrification, we might say that electricity is a natural phenomenon that is neither inherently good or bad. Electricity is a valued good of nature when the outcome is that enhancement or experienced as aesthetically beautiful, like lightning. We see it in the sky and it's beautiful. We say that's good. Or if it enhances our soil, as it does when it strikes the ground. Electricity is disvalued in nature. It's considered bad when it results in injury or destruction. So if somebody gets hit by lightning, or if it causes a fire and burns our barn or our home, we consider it bad. Production of electricity is a human phenomenon that also is neither inherently good nor bad. Electrical generation is valued. It's considered good when it enhances life or nature. It's disvalued or considered bad when it impedes or destroys life and nature. Given what we value relative to electricity, whether natural or especially when it's generated by humans, we have rules that we've created. We say that humans ought to generate and use electricity in ways that do enhance life and nature. We say that doing so is right, and then imperatively we say do it. On the other hand, we say that a rule is that humans ought not to generate and use electricity in ways that impede or destroy life and nature. Doing so would be wrong. And so the imperative is don't. And yet we know that a lot of things happen. So the question for each of us and for our society as a whole, for our world, is are our electrification practices enhancing or impeding life and nature? Ruth and I have asked that question, and we want to be good. We want to do the right thing. And so we have engaged in electrification efforts so as to hopefully be good and to do the right thing. So here, I think I've got about 6 different ways that we have tried to do the right thing in the last decade or so. Number 1 is that we went with solar generation in our home north of Lawrence. It happened that we went with your company, Bill, and we have a 7.65 kilowatt solar array, 30 panels on our roof. each of them 255 watts, if I understand correctly. We were told that we could estimate annual generation of about 10,000 kilowatt hours. I calculate that we've actually generated about 2/3 of that, 6,800 actual as of a few days ago over the past 9 years. And that may be due to shading. I'm wondering now if we have a string rather than a micro inverter, and that whenever we get some shade on part of our roof, it's impeding all of them. But I'm not sure. I didn't know the difference. We did get a 30% federal tax credit. Our initial costs then were $16,000 after the credit. We also had an option of a 15-year lease at 0% interest with a bank down south of Ottawa somewhere. We decided to do it up front. Our payoff was said to be 9 to 10 years. Given that we're producing less than estimated, our payoff may actually go a little bit longer than that. We were told that our estimated 25-year cost savings were around $78,000. Even if it's 2/3 of that, we're happy. We did this not to save money so much as to be good and do the right thing for the earth. We have net metering. As of last night, when I went out and took this photo, we had sent 42,645 kilowatt hours to the grid in the 9 years since we've had this up. This is over and above what we have utilized while the sun is producing electricity. We have used 67,500 kilowatt hours taken and pulled from the grid in the 9 years. We have this solar inverter. Again, I don't know if it's string or micro, but it converts from DC to AC, as Bill was saying. This is the little readout on our inverter, which indicates the grid type, indicates that on the day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when I took this photo, the current AC wattage was being converted. It was 46, what? I can't quite see my numbers here. Yeah, so 4,600 watts, 270 volts of DC were being produced. At that point, 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a mostly sunny day, we had produced 14 kilowatt hours of electricity. Last year, 2022, this is the readout of, the color should be reversed here, I suppose. The green is what we pulled from the grid. The blue is what we sent to the grid. That was 2022. In 2023, it's roughly the same. It appears to be, and we have a house with I don't know exactly what square footage, but it's a heating and cooling quite a lot of square feet. In addition to that, I have a clay studio that I run a kiln, and we're charging an EV, as we'll see in a minute. So we're generating a lot, but we're still using a lot. This is the total that we have generated since we put this in 2014, so 60,700 kilowatt hours. And we have generated for 36,700 hours of sun time. And I like this one. We have saved CO2, more than 1 million pounds of CO2 from going into the atmosphere. That's why we did this. Second thing that we did beyond solar is we replaced all of our light bulbs. We have a few CFLs, but we've mostly gone with all LEDs. And about 9-10 years ago, they were quite costly. So we invested in that, but the payout over the years, most of them are still functioning. We haven't replaced hardly any of them. Thirdly, we bought a hybrid vehicle in 2016. Our Prius gets A 2012 Prius gets about 45 to 50 miles per gallon. In 2019, at the end of the year, we got a great deal on a new Bolt EV. And zero carbon emissions, of course, 180 to 280 miles per charge, depends. Wintertime is lower, summertime higher. We got a federal tax rebate. I don't recall exactly what it was, a couple thousand maybe, Ruth, off of that. It wasn't as much as some of the other vehicles for Chevrolet. We can charge either in 110 volt standard. It takes a long time to charge it, several days. So I installed 220 volt chargers, level 2 charging, and the costs are approximately $4 per 100 miles. Compare that to our minivan, which is fully gas, and that would be about $16 per 100 miles probably. Ruth loves that it has great torque, acceleration. She can get into traffic real quick on the interstate. And I have done, we have 35,000 miles. I have done almost no, like I rotated the tires once. I should have done it many times, but that's it. There's no maintenance. This is one of the 220s that I put in. We have an upper and lower garage. I put one in each, and then we have a condo in town. So I installed one out in front of our condo as well. Really pretty inexpensive to do. It's just, it looks like this. It's kind of like what you plug into at a campsite out in the state park. The fifth thing we did, and this was the most costly of everything, we just did this year. Actually, back in 2000, in our previous home in Lenexa, we had bought heat pumps, but the old technology. So we had to have a full backup of natural gas for wintertime, and we were mostly using natural gas because below about 35 degrees, the heat pump wasn't producing much. But we had a mini split, and we also had one large heat pump that worked with our ducted system. In this home, we had propane, and we replaced the propane this year with Mitsubishi compressors, heat pump compressors. Actually, in 2017, when I built my clay studio on our property, I put in one of the Mitsubishis with hyperheat. So I use this in the wintertime down below zero, and it's still producing heat. Doesn't keep me toasty warm, but it'll keep me about 60 degrees, and that's plenty in a clay studio. And there's the air handler up on the wall in my clay studio. Then just earlier this year, we upgraded our home HVAC. We had to upgrade the electrical cable and panel to 200 amp service. We had 150 amp, and the cable was not sufficient. So we ran new cable from the pole to the house. That and upgrading the panel was pricey. It cost, I think, about $6,000 or more to do all of that. But found some things that weren't exactly safe as well. So that was something we should have been doing anyway. Then we purchased 2 more Mitsubishi hyperheat inverter condensers, a 3-ton, a 2.5 ton, because we have a multi-zone home. We have 2 multi-position air handlers for our ducted basement level apartment and our main level. And then we have 3 mini split air handlers in 3 parts of our house that are more difficult to heat and cool because of where they're located. And then I also installed myself a heat pump water heater. So this is the upgraded panel to 200 amps. These are our outside 3-ton, 2.5 ton condensers. You see the conduit that needs to go from there inside is very non-intrusive. It melds right into the siding. So I worried a little bit about that, but aesthetically, no problems whatsoever. These are the two multi-position air handlers that have taken the place of the two propane furnaces. We had one for our lower level and one for the rest of the house. And now we have these two air handlers. This one for the main part of the house has a 8 kilowatt heat coil, electric heat coil that I've never tried yet. We'll see. On a cold day, we probably might use that. It would take a good bit more electricity, of course. And then in 3 rooms, including this one, we have the 2.5 ton condenser is feeding this and the other 2 mini split air handlers. And it works really, really well thus far. Here's where I'm sitting right now, right here, and right behind me is this mini split here in my 3rd level, what used to be an unfinished attic, and therefore was hard to heat and cool. Now it stays consistently 68 or whatever I set it at. And each air handler has its own thermostat controller remote. This is for the ducted system, the main level. And again, that's remote using Wi-Fi. And here's the heat pump water heater that I installed. So we are totally off of propane. Our tank is still there. It'll just stay there and, make it into some kind of an art piece someday, probably. Finally, Ruth reminded me, and so I added this an hour or so ago, that we had gone electric in our riding lawnmower, and I also had replaced the old chainsaw, gas chainsaw, with both of them Greenworks battery operated. And this is just as powerful as the 18 horsepower, and actually a little more powerful than the 18 horsepower John Deere that I had been using for 8 years. And it's quiet, and I don't bother my neighbors, and I'm not polluting the air. So we asked ourselves, are we enhancing or impeding life and nature by our electrification? And we hope that we are now being a little better and doing the right thing. And I too am open to questions anytime any of you have one.
Yeah, so we now have come to a time where we can have questions. And I see, Jerry, you've raised your hands. Why don't you get us started? Thank you, Terry, for your presentation.
I might mention to Mr. Wood that at Go Green, I met up with a fellow named Brad Kay from Cromwell.
Oh, yes.
He's in touch with me, and he wants my 12-month record of electrical consumption. But one question I have is, my house was built in 1952. Is my roof strong enough? Can we assume my roof is strong enough to support panels?
Generally, most if you have a standard 2x4 rafters, generally they're stout enough.
So that should not. How would that be determined or confirmed?
So when I go out and do a site visit, I'll get up and take pictures and measurements of the roof rafter system, and then our design team takes a look at it. And if they have any questions, they'll have an engineer look at it. So, yeah, most homes, if they're standard 2x4s or maybe larger ones, were built to handle 2 layers of shingles. And solar panels the weight that a solar panel has is about the same as 1 layer of a decent shingle. So we won't put solar. If you've got 2 layers of shingles on your roof, we won't install on that. But
When we bought the house 30 years ago, I think we had 2, maybe 3 layers of shingles. And we finally got rid of those and put on a composition timberline roof. So I would hope that we might be okay in that regard.
yes, yes,
I understand that solar panels also protect your roof against hail.
that is. I've had 3 people on, I think it's State Farm, that they did not raise their insurance when they put solar on it because the company says you're protecting our roof from small hail.
Mm.
We've had 1 hail damaged home, and it was the very first picture I showed on mine out in the country, and it was softball size, and it hit 3 out of 30 panels. It was a really weird storm, but softball size direct hit. The back side of the roof was not scarred at all, so it's pretty much a direct hit. Yes, that broke some panels.
You mentioned something about bifacial panels that can pick up energy off the ground, reflected off the ground. I saw a documentary that said windows can also be solar panels now. Totally transparent windows can be solar panels.
I've heard that there are some windows that have been that they're making them into solar panels. I've not seen one.
Okay.
Thank you. Noni, you have a question.
Yes, I have a question for each of you. I work with churches in Kansas and Missouri. So, Bill, my question to you is, how far does your service area reach?
We'll go out 400 to 500 miles. We go
Oh,
clear to the
okay.
Colorado border. I just gave a bid to a guy down at Table Rock in Arkansas. We don't want to get too far because if we need to
Sure.
go out and make a visit, but yeah, we'll go through into Missouri.
Okay. And then, so if it's farther, maybe you could help us find someone else who is, you just want to find someone who you can trust. So, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, great. And Terrace, my question for you is, do you have the name of a vendor that you would suggest for HVAC systems for heat pumps?
Yeah, if you will, Ruth maybe has your email.
Yeah.
I'd happily email that to you.
Ooh, that'd be great. Because we have several congregations we learned about last week at a conference that are needing to replace their HVAC systems. So I want to get them information as soon as possible.
Yeah. We I looked around some and had several people come out and look at what we wanted to do, and ultimately went with an entity
Okay.
close to Kansas City with because I wanted another Mitsubishi system like I had in my clay studio.
Okay.
And this is a HVAC company that does a lot of Mitsubishi. So he has the top rating with Mitsubishi and gets more of their product. They had some trouble with supply lines.
Yeah.
A year ago, and I don't know where they're at with that. But since he does a lot, they had supplied him better than the rest of the folk around. So, and
Okay.
he did a great job. Yeah, I'll send that to you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Great presentation. Very understandable. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yes, Jim.
And I've been listening. I haven't heard anything about geothermal. I have a house in Oregon and we put in a geothermal system. We have 12 loops underground. I also have solar, but the geothermal, my heating and cooling, all electricity costs, including heating water, was $100 or less a month. And so we've added solar on top of that. But I think geothermal is a good investment too. I had about $35,000 initial, but I think I have some saving monstrously every month.
Thank you for bringing that up, Jim, because certainly that is a wonderful way of having this continuous supply of heat or cool, depending on what you need. Yeah, but we haven't actually focused on that, so I do appreciate that.
I looked into it some, Jim, and we didn't have the yard for it to drill the holes for the wells that would need to be done. But I was also told by the Mitsubishi installer that that their product is now so efficient that it's actually more efficient than geothermal. He gave an example. Somebody, I think it may be, actually it wasn't the person that installed it, but it was another one that came out to give a bid. He said one of his customers had quite a number of geothermal wells, I think 10. One or two of them leaked, and instead of repairing, I think it was just one of the 10 leaked. And so instead of repairing the 10, he just shut it all off and went with the Mitsubishi hyperheat inverter system. And he said it's actually more efficient than his geothermal. So I don't know.
I don't know. Used to live in San Diego, and I was spending about $400 a month for electricity. And my home here in Oregon, before I put solar on, I hardly spent $100 a month. And I do have solar now, and the solar, well, I'm paying $13 a month to connect to the grid. And probably at this point, I have 850 watts of credit left until March. And I imagine I probably will use most of the credit up by December. And then I'll be paying premium rates because be paying for solar and to the solar company and to the electric company both. But from April till November, December, I have no bill at all.
Mhm. Mhm.
At least to the electric company, other than the connection fee.
Yeah.
And here the connection fee is more, it was 28 for a number of years. It's just gone up to a little over 30. So before I had a kiln in a clay studio, and an EV car, there were quite a few months per year where I was just paying the $28 connect fee. After the kiln went in and the EV, now we never have a month where we're only paying the connect fee, but it's still, usually under $100 total. So not too bad.
Yeah, if I can figure out how to do this, I wanted to share. I don't think I can. I wanted to share just a few resources for doing this. Let's see if I can do this. I'm recording this, and so I'm a little limited on how much I can. Oops, sorry. Maybe it's not going to work to stop sharing. I had this set up, but I can't minimize the screen. Just hang on a second. I know we're almost to the end here. But what I wanted to mention is that there are a lot of, help out there to figure out what to do. Here we go. And I can send this out to you. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can, okay. So let me just go real quickly through this. If you are not familiar with Rewiring America, .org, this is a nonprofit that has their focus on helping families, businesses, and nonprofits go totally electric to all their machines. And they have a huge amount of information available. So this is one book they have, Go Electric, on their website. They have all the Inflation Reduction Act rebates and incentives information about that. And as you can see from this kind of summary, if you're low or moderate income, there's quite a few rebates that will be available very soon, probably if not the end of this year, the beginning of next year. Those are run by the state, so they're a little slower in getting out. And then there's tax credits available for electrical panels, weatherization, heat pump, water heat pump, and induction stove. Well, not that's for a rebate. But you can see that there's EV. There's a lot of rebates, a lot of tax credits available. You can also go online at Rewiring America and put in your zip code and fill in this household income, and they will calculate for you, which of these tax credits, which of these rebates you would be appropriate for, and figure out that everybody can save quite a bit. And then they have actually that, let's go back. This was a guide to help you kind of plan. So they have all of them here on this. This is in their Go Electric guide, and they encourage people to make a plan. Like this year we'll do this, and then this next year we'll do this next thing, making use of the credits or the rebates, and eventually moving through one's household to electrify everything, making use of this government help. And the government wants us to do this because they've dedicated a lot of information or a lot of money for this, but it's not going to do any good if people aren't actually, utilizing it. So check out Electrify or Rewire America. They have this one for Electrify Everything in Your Home, another booklet, Electrifies Everything If You're a Rental. Things that you can do still to move toward electricity, even if you don't own your own home. I also want to mention Energy Star, which is run by the EPA, has a action workbook for congregations, but Energy Star is it researches and puts this little Energy Star on those machines that are energy efficient. And especially for the rebates, I think they need to have them on to be this efficient in order to get the rebates. So they also provide a lot of resources that are available. Revolve is a nonprofit that does financing for nonprofits in order to get solar. And it's kind of a situation where they will put on the solar, work with an installer in the area, and they will pay for it, and they will therefore get the tax credit for it. And then the organization will just pay less than what their normal electricity bill is until they've paid it off. And then usually after, I can't remember how many years they said, but at 20 years, I think, they give the system to the church or the nonprofit. They're not working in every single state, but they're working in a lot of states. So if you're from a congregation and trying to find financing, this might be something to an organization to look up. And again, I will send you information about this. Plug in America is another nonprofit that is trying to make it easy to understand, what kind of EV to buy and where are the chargers and all sorts of things about electric vehicles. And then Interfaith Power and Light, we will probably talk more about next week or 2 weeks from now, because our speaker is working with them. But they also are doing a lot with their Cool Congregations program to encourage solar and geothermal and weatherization and electrifying everything to help congregations move toward kind of a net zero place. So they have a lot of really helpful resources. And in fact, they are going to have a webinar October 25th, so a week from today, called Holy Heat Pumps. So we're talking about how churches can find some financing for heat pump systems for their HVAC system. I think that's all I need. Through government sources as well. So they have a lot of resources as well. So I will send an email out that has these, but I want to kind of emphasize and encourage that it does take some planning, financial planning, and it really takes a lot of looking around to kind of figure out what system works. Our system is rather elaborate for our house because we added on those three, or we made, we made the attic into 2 rooms. That's where 2 of those mini splits went, and a porch into a room. And so it's kind of an elaborate system. You may need just one for your home, but each one is very individualized. And so it does take planning, and it does take pre-planning for any of these things, because if we don't, when something goes out, we're just going to replace our machine with what's easiest and most convenient, unless we're really willing to be without heat or air conditioning, which we kind of were for a while, were we, Terry? We went through most of last summer without air conditioning in order to get to where we needed to be, and we lost heat for one of our units the winter before we got it put in. So if you don't want to have that kind of a situation to live in, then it really is planning. And I've talked to people where they say, it went out, so I just went ahead and got a gas one, and now I have 20, 30 years of being in that gas situation. So planning ahead is a really important thing to do. So I realize I'm talking on and I've gone a little past time. And so I'm hoping your questions, I don't see other hands. I'm hoping questions have been answered. And I will send an email out to y'all. I do want to thank Bill and Terry both very much for your sharing on solar, electrification, on the importance of doing this. And of course, there's benefits beyond reducing greenhouse gases in order to care for our world. Usually we're saving money and we're having cleaner air. And there's a lot of conversation right now about gas stoves, being bad for respiratory illness and stuff like that. So it's cleaner, it's healthier, it's as well as being really good and the right thing to do, as Terry helped us understand. So in 2 weeks, we will be meeting again at the same time, 7 p.m. on November 1st. Our 4th session in this series will focus on reducing energy use and increasing energy efficiency. And our guest presenter will be Josh Richardson, who is the executive director and founder of Brugmansia Ministries, which helps faith communities adapt their buildings and change their ministries to meet the needs created by climate change. He is an interesting person. He holds master's degrees both in geological sciences and public ministry, and is an environmental geologist, ecological thinker, public theologian, and faith leader. So I do hope that you will join us again in a couple of weeks and be a part of that. Thank you so much for being a part of this and for this conversation. Thank you again, Terry and Bill. And this evening now, I say goodbye and good night.